Well, aloha, everybody. This is Cathy Bilsky, the Quantum Leap Let Light Unite show on UPRN Radio. And this is Friday night, September 27th. And this is live from Virginia. And if you're seeing me live, guys, I'm on vacation, okay? This is midnight for me. And you're usually in Hawaii, it's 4 o'clock, 6 o'clock in the evening. So what you see is what you get. At least I don't have my pajamas on. I have a very special show for you today. I've got Victor Salama coming on from First Friends of New York and New Jersey. We're going to talk about immigrants and how we can help immigrants and what it's like for immigrants to be in prison. You know, we forget about people that are in prison, and the United States have the largest prison population in the world. So, out of sight, out of mind. And, every one of us is a hair breadth away from being in prison, from doing something. And before I bring Victor on and talk about this, I just wanted to say a few words about, there's this wonderful young woman from Sweden who I'm sure, or Switzerland, you've heard about, named Greta Thunberg. Sorry, Greta. And she's really passionate about climate change, and she's really shaking up a lot of shoes and pushing a lot of buttons. I have had more adults come out on my Facebook page complaining about her, trying to dig up all kinds of dirt about her, saying she's a Nazi and this is propaganda. And it's like, my God, what is wrong with you people? What is wrong with you adults? Are you actually mentally ill? Now, I don't really care who has funded her. We need more people like her to speak out with passion. The girl has Asperger's, and if you know anything about anybody with Asperger's, is they are focused, and she is focused on the climate. She's shaking people up, and they're going, oh my God, she's putting fear into our kids. No, she's not. Our kids are already there. My kids have already come up to me and said, Mom, are you aware of what's going on with the climate? What can you do? I'm worried about my future. Will I have one? Will my children have one? Will I have to fight for food? That's coming from my kids, not from her. So when I see her come out and speak with passion and get people's attention, I stand with her. And for all you adults that are attacking her, just shut the hell up. Climate change is real. And if she is bringing it up to our attention because it's urgent, well, then she's doing her job, and she's doing a darn good job, because all these people that are actually talking about her and criticizing her, not one of them brings up anything about the climate. They don't talk about Fukushima and how we're being radiated to death. They're not talking about the Amazon still burning. They're not talking about the water supply. And Flint, I'm from Michigan. Flint is drinking lead water. The Indians out west are drinking, they want them to drink water that's got uranium in it. So please don't tell me this young girl is not speaking truth. So, lead, follow, or get out of her way. All right, I'm done. Well, welcome, Victor. Thank you for coming on my show tonight and speaking about what we're going to speak about. And you're from the First Friends of New Jersey and New York. And can you
Yes,
explain to everybody what the group's about?
sure, absolutely, Ken. Thank you so much for your time, and I appreciate the platform and the forum to talk about something that, as you well said, is what I call a hidden shame. Immigration detention is all around us in the state of New Jersey, where we are based. There are right now approximately 2,200 immigrants in detention in 4 northern New Jersey jails. And what First Friends of New Jersey and New York does is we focus on 3 elements. We provide detention visitation to those who are in detention. So we bring volunteers into the prisons to visit with the detainees, and we call them detained friends. Then what we do is we provide post-release services. So when they're out, it's a pretty complicated situation once they're out, and I'll talk about that in a bit. And so we provide all types of services to them as soon as they are released. And then the third one is advocacy. We advocate on behalf of them as individuals, and of course in front of county government and in front of detention center officials. It's a nasty business, this idea of immigration detention. It's big money business, and we want to be sure that every detained immigrant gets their fair shot at a legal process, and to be treated with compassion and be treated like human beings.
I agree with you 100%. And I know people personally that are immigrants living in this country and fear. They're trying to live a life and they don't know what's going to happen. They don't know who's knocking on their door. They don't know if they're going to be picked up. They can't have real lives. The stress is unbelievable, and I'm sure you know more about that than I do, dealing with everybody.
Yeah, I mean it's a sad situation, and what we see in detention are what I usually categorize as 3 types of detainees. The first one is the person who is seeking asylum in the United States and has asked for asylum legally, and asylum is a legal process that's been going on for decades here in the United States. And these are people that are coming from their home countries, fleeing violence. And they're usually coming in, individually, and they get to a port of call and they seek asylum, and then they get arrested. That's been the process here in the United States for decades. It's a terrible process, but they get arrested and they put in detention. So that's one group that we see, and obviously they already come from a stressful situation because they're fleeing their family, their violence, from violence. They're fleeing their country, their cultures. So imagine what it is to be all of a sudden be arrested at the airport, at a port. So that's amazingly stressful. The second group we see are people who get arrested around the southern border, who are crossing, and obviously that's a stressful situation. Imagine the physical impact of something like that. We have people who have walked for literally thousands of miles, or hitchhiked or something for thousands of miles, so they're under stress, and then they get arrested. And the third one, which is obviously just as sad, is all those people that you mentioned, the people who have been living within our communities for years and years and years, and they get swept up by during an ICE raid. And they really haven't done anything wrong, except for cross the border without documents, and they've been living among us, paying into our system, buying things, working with us, and then they get arrested. So imagine all the stress that happens to the family who is still in the community. If the main breadwinner gets swept up in an ICE raid, and I'm talking about usually it's a male, then the wife and the children get stuck with no breadwinner. Who's going to pay the rent? What's going to happen to the children? A lot of stress, a lot of mental anguish, just a terrible situation.
I know you deal with New Jersey and New York, and and I have to say, I just discovered, because I went online and tried to see where all the detention centers were, and we actually have one in Honolulu. Now I'm on the Big Island, okay, so Honolulu is a couple islands away. Now, if I was on the mainland, driving there wouldn't be a problem, but to get there is it's not practical. That's one of the reasons I was drawn to your group. I saw the show and I mentioned this before, Orange is the New Black, and it's about
Mm-hmm.
women in prison. But the last season and the last couple shows, it was a lot about immigrants and what we were
Yep.
doing. It tore me up, Victor. I was in tears. I mean, I cried through the last probably 3 shows, and I couldn't sleep that night after the last show. And the next day, I was just torn up. Yeah, I had to do something. You
Yeah.
know, it's you don't do anything. You're like complacent. And
Yeah. Yeah. And and this is why I always say that this is our hidden shame, because for most of us, even before I joined the organization, we have 4 detention centers within approximately 30 minutes of my house. But I had never visited one. I really, and I know a lot of immigrants. My parents are immigrants from Argentina, so, and I speak Spanish fluently. So I've been around this topic, but I never really did anything. It's because it was not exactly in my backyard. Um, so this is what we're trying to do: get the message out that everyone can help in one way or the other. And for someone like yourself who lives far away, you can be a pen pal. You can be a pen pal. A lot of prisons have pen pal programs. If you're near enough and you want to visit a detention center, First Friends of New Jersey, New York is the largest and the oldest detention visitation program in the country. And last year we had 295 volunteers visit 348 detained friends. Those volunteers gave up about almost 1,200 hours of their time visiting detained friends, and it makes such a massive difference in the detained friend's life. These are prisons. Let's not make any mistake. It's the same with the general population, except that they're divided and they don't see each other. But it's the same facilities, and they're bland, and they don't go outside, and they get very little exercise. So for a visitor to come in and cheer someone up, wear something colorful, because that cheers them up, and talk to them, tell them about what's going on in the outside world, is a massive, massive boost to their psyche. But pen pals also, getting a letter, even for you and me to get a letter is always, personal letter is always nice. I'm of the generation that I used to write letters, but for them, getting a letter is a fabulous thing. So we have a pen pal program that people can sign up to, and it's really really of great benefit.
well, I signed up for that program, and I
Thank you.
say that I do. As a matter of fact, I just sent my letters off last Monday. And I have one from each one of your um, the buildings,
Yeah,
prison
facilities, yeah,
systems. Yeah.
yeah.
Um, and I figure, even a letter or whatever I write, and who knows if they're going to share it. If they share it with others, it might give others hope, and it might be like a ripple effect. Um,
Sure.
but I also read, and is this true, that if they get letters, that they're also looked at differently from the guards and treated differently?
It could be. I mean, the whole thing is that the detained immigrant is sort of, a lot of the guards in these facilities haven't been trained in dealing with someone who's an administrative detainee. They haven't committed a crime really. I mean, they've committed an administrative crime, which is literally crossing a border, which is quite artificial if we talk about the human condition. So it's interesting that what we've trying to advocate is more education for guards, because the guards need to look at them a little differently. What we want is we want these folks, who some of them will definitely be released into our population, to be ready to be integrated into our communities, so that way they're productive members of our communities. And it helps that the guards treat them a certain way, that they get certain levels of training and education, so that way they know how to treat these people. But at the same time, definitely, when a detained friend shows that they have a relationship with the outside world, there's a different level of treatment for sure. And let me just speak about something, if I may. this isn't just a New Jersey and New York issue. We have approximately 55,000 immigrants in detention today, detained by the by ICE, Immigration and Customs Enforcement, in approximately 250 to 260 centers throughout the country. So this is a widespread issue, and everyone who listens to your show can get involved by, looking up at the map that ICE has on its website and finding a facility and seeing how far it is or how close it is, and getting involved. Trust me, you'll make a massive difference in a human being's life who really needs all the support they can get.
Well, that's how I looked at it. And so are you, though, mostly in charge of men or men and women?
Yeah, we have some women, but it's about 90% men, 10% women. You know what we see in our detention facilities that we deal with are, like I said, 90% men, a majority of whom are from Central and South America right now, and I would say they're in their 20s. That's kind of the average, the sort of the average population. Just today, well, actually last night, we picked up someone. I picked him up at 8:30 at night from the Essex County Jail's parking lot. He was released. He's a 20-year-old gentleman from Honduras. So a very young man. Almost like really. You look at him, it's like a baby. It's amazing how young he looks. And this person had nowhere to go. He was released, and he had never set foot in New Jersey as a free man. He was transported from the border, and he got released in the middle of at night with nowhere to go. And that's where we come in. We come in and we pick the people up through staff or volunteers, and then we house them. Last night we had to house this person in a hotel, and then today, after being in our office, we put him on a bus to be reunited with a family member in St. Louis, Missouri. So, these are people who are, good people, and many of them already have family members here, and they can get integrated pretty quickly in our society. It's just a shame that they're wasting, we're wasting our money, jailing them, and they're wasting their time being jailed.
How often do they release people at night?
They get released at night almost for us, almost exclusively. The process. The process it's a bureaucratic one. So by the time there are approvals and back and forth, if you're paying, let's say, a bond to get someone released, then it just takes time. So usually the slots are between, usually they get released at night. So last night was a nice evening here in New Jersey. It was warm. It was not a problem. But can you imagine being released in January and you don't have any winter clothing, and you're sitting there and you have nowhere to go, or you're waiting for a bus that comes every God knows when? That's why First Friends is so important in my estimation, because that's what we do. We help them by offering them shelter, short-term shelter, and then transportation to wherever they need to go to be reunited with family members. If they didn't have that, they'd literally be homeless.
So I think being dropped off and released anywhere at midnight is just very cruel.
Sure.
The paperwork. Now I got a question for you. It might be a little out of. I'm really upset with United Airlines, and I don't think I'll ever fly again. They changed their policy. Can I donate you my air miles?
Well, we'd love to, but we don't use planes. What we do, we send people by bus. It's just very complicated for just released immigrants with the paperwork that they have to go through airport security. But we do have a GoFundMe campaign right now that is focused on bus fares, paying for bus fares for just released detainees. It's a major cost that we have. In July, we bought 38 bus tickets to all over the country, and this has been a massive wave for us. So when we pick them up, again, we house them sometimes in volunteer homes or hotels, but we also have to then put them on buses. So that's something that we're fundraising for, but unfortunately we don't take air miles, because we just don't put people on airplanes. We also can't afford it. We have a small budget.
That makes sense. What does an average ticket cost you?
Oh, anywhere above $250, and we just paid one for 500. We paid one for 275. The hotels are everything's expensive, as you well know, and that's why we do fundraising. But yeah, anywhere above 250 is usually. We've sent people to Houston, South Dakota, LA, Atlanta, Miami, everywhere in the country, and it's a continuous thing. We get a release at least one or two a night now, and yeah, that's what we do. Luckily for us, we have a great group of volunteers. Truly, we wouldn't be anything without our volunteers, and we have many volunteers who will pick up at detention centers, at jails, even at 10 o'clock at night, and they will house the our detained friends for a night, and then they'll transport them to usually Newark Penn Station to catch the bus. We just have tremendous volunteers that really make our organization tick.
Wow. You were talking about the prison guards and how they need to be trained. And I have a feeling that I don't think any prison guards anywhere are really well trained. I was talking with a woman down in Florida that she was in a women's prison, and how it's all good old boys, where
Hmm.
the guards go back generations. And the only thing I can relate it to, I'm from Michigan, where, at the time where I grew up, everybody worked in the factory and everybody tried to get into the factory, but it's not the same thing where you were hurting people.
Hmm. Well, look, I've got to say this. As an organization that also advocates, we work very closely with the counties that we're in. So, in New Jersey, we have three county jails that take uh, immigrants into detention. ICE has contracts with them, so they get paid a lot of money to house immigrants. So Essex County gets anywhere between 32 to 35 million dollars. Hudson County gets something like 20 something million dollars, and Bergen County gets like 12 to 15 million dollars. This isn't small money. It's big money. So we have high expectations of these counties when treating these people. What we don't want is this money to go into infrastructure development in the counties. We want the money spent on the immigrants in terms of services, good food, good infrastructure, and also training for training for officials and officers. I think it's really, really important, because this is you have to have a certain level of decency to treat people who are administrative disease, and also you should have language skills, certain language skills. You should have some things. So that's what we do. We press the counties to spend, if they're going to get this money from the federal government, and it's our money being paid into the federal government, and spend. If counties are going to get this money, they better treat these people with a lot of respect. And it starts with the officials in the jail.
Now, they were saying that for the immigrant children that are being kept in cages, those private prison corporations are getting about $750 a day.
It's amazing. I mean, if you, I don't, we don't work with children nor families in these jails. They house adults. But I can tell you one thing. Um, the private prison business is massive. So, Elizabeth Detention Center, one of the facilities that we work with, is run by Core Civic. It's owned by Core Civic, which is the second largest private prison company in the country. And their revenues last year were $6 billion. That's a B. That's a massive number. to incarcerate people. Luckily, in the last couple of years, there's been a lot of movement towards bail reform in the general population. That's really important. That's allowed people to leave prisons, and what we're seeing now with this administration is a lot more use of bonds to get people out. It's this is all about money. So just to give you an example, over the last week, we have bonded out two detained immigrants to the tune of $15,000 combined. That's a lot of money for some people who really are pretty poor, and so it goes into this pot into a federal pot where it's like a guarantee that someone will show up at detention. But there's money being made left and right in this business, and it's truly a terrible thing. And from a moral point of view, as someone who's a property owner, I don't care that my county is able to give me $100 deduction in my property taxes off the backs of people who are detained, and frankly, having a private prison system is completely disgusting and immoral. And I think that's one thing that we should fight against for sure.
Do you see a difference between the private prisons and the federally run prisons?
Remember, we don't have any federally run
Okay.
prisons that we work with county. Frankly, the Elizabeth Detention Center, I hate to say it does what it's supposed to do well, which is incarcerate people and keep them safe and all that. So we don't see it too much here. What we're disgusted about is the fact that that this money is going to a private corporation that's making billions of dollars on the backs of mostly what are poor people and people of color. It's a disgrace.
What's the average time an immigrant's in detention?
Yeah, great question. So right now, I can tell you in our facilities right now, it's anywhere between 2 to 6 months, depending. But I can tell you that we have several cases that are ridiculously long. We have a man who's now been in detention for 3 years. We just got someone out through a bond that was in detention for 2.5 years. We have several cases that have been going on 18 months. Right now, we're seeing a lot more transition, especially from people from the southern border who are arrested down there. They get detained in Texas and they stay there for about 2 weeks to a month, and then they get sent up here into New Jersey, and then they'll stay here, 3 to 6 months, I'd say, and then they usually get an opportunity to get bonded out, meaning that someone puts a lot of money, a big check, and it allows these people to go to be reunited with family members in the United States, awaiting their immigration court date, and that's how the process works. One thing about time, let me just state this: I think the average, the whole court process takes something like, on average in the United States, something like 500 or 600 days. So it's like 2 years it takes. In New Jersey, we're one of the highest. It takes one of the longest. It's like the average is 930 days. And in New York, it's like 777 days from the start to the finish of the process. That's a tremendous amount of time. And right now, there's over 1 million cases pending in immigration courts throughout the United States. So this is a major issue. The system is broken, and we can't gloss over it. This is going to continue for a long, long time. So hopefully there'll be some political changes, and we can fix this problem, because it's going to continue.
What is, if any, would you say the logic is from taking someone from the border and shipping them up to New Jersey?
There is none. I mean, look, from what we've gathered, from information from the detained friends themselves, at least the New Jersey facilities are safer and cleaner and better maintained. So that's the only logic. The crazy aspect of it is, think about what it's costing you and me as American taxpayers. Putting people on airplanes, sending them up here, busing people around. It's a massive, massive cost. And what's happening now is the administration is trying to shift, or working hard to shift funds from, let's say, FEMA, from the Department of Defense, into ICE's coffers, because ICE is only funded, I think, at the tune of 34,000 beds, and we're up to 55,000 beds. So this is insane. This is costing. This is money that you and me are putting in through our federal taxes and being spent on imprisonment and air transportation. What I call ICE Airways. It's crazy.
Describe what it's like for an immigrant in detention.
Sure. Well, I can tell you that it's certainly a very boring and bland experience. It's certainly traumatic. There's obviously no privacy. They get locked up, in some of the prisons. They get locked up 9 times, so they're counted 9 times, so they're in and out of their cells. They don't go outside for the most part, at least in these facilities that we see. So there's no outdoor space, and sunlight is basically indirect. I can tell you that Elizabeth Detention Center, if you looked at it, you thought it was like a UPS or FedEx warehouse. They have light coming up from high sort of windows, so no one can even look outside or look inside. They wear the same type of uniforms that prisoners wear, regular prisoners wear. So there's no color, and for the most part, food is very bland and not very appealing. So it's not good. But one of the things we worry about is depression and despair. There's no set date for the most part in immigration. You're waiting. You're waiting for if you have an attorney, for the attorney to tell you, oh, your court case and so and so. You're just waiting around. So it's just this wait, interminable wait, that you don't know what's happening. I think that's something that causes most stress. Luckily, what First Friends provides is we provide a call hotline where detainees can call us and we can connect them to their family members internationally. We buy calling cards, and we have that ability to connect them, so that way, at least for 10 minutes once a week, they can speak to their family members, because they're completely lonely, and there's very little there's very little psychiatric help and things like that, and very little exercise. They probably get exercise, 1 hour of free open exercise. So it's dehumanizing, and it's stressful, and it's depressing, and that's where volunteering, coming and going and visiting, being a volunteer and visiting, is such a break from the monotony, because you can spend an hour speaking about the outside world and seeing a different face and hearing a different voice. That's why it makes such a big difference.
Can you use Spanish books?
Yeah,
For
we
people to
can. They
donate?
have to be, they have to be soft cover. For the most part, a lot of jails, we know several that we're dealing with, that don't accept hardbound books. Certainly, we do. If people go to our website, which is firstfriendsnjny.org, and we're revamping our website, but right now it is what it is. There is, you can find something called Stamp Out Despair. It's basically, we have a campaign twice a year where we give writing materials. So we give envelopes, stamps, paper, and folders, and some greeting cards to every detained immigrant. We do this twice a year. So that way they can be connected, they can write to the outside world. So if people want to donate those, that's fantastic. They can look to see what exactly is in one of those folders. They can make some folders, maybe they can put 5 or 10 together and ship them to us. We'd be eternally grateful, because we do that twice a year to the tune of 2,200 folders. So that's really sort of a useful thing as well for us.
Wow. So what are in these folders again?
Yeah, so we have usually about 8. We usually have like empty envelopes, but then we also have stamped envelopes. So stamps are very important. And so we have both stamps for domestic and international use, forever stamps. We have colored paper. We have blank writing paper. I mentioned the envelopes and some greeting cards. And every folder usually has a personalized note from a volunteer stating, something positive, a message to every detained friend. So it can be in English or in Spanish or whatever language. We have tons of people from all parts of the world. So these are really, really very positive and beneficial to the detainees. They really look forward to receiving them. And we have, we're going to do it, we're going to give these out in December. So if people want to send those to us, we'd be really, really grateful.
But one of the things when you write to a inmate or immigrant, you're not allowed to send them stamps, correct?
Sometimes, right. Sometimes you are, sometimes you're not. So we have 3 facilities that allow stamps, 1 facility that does not, and that's explained on the website. So we will sort that out. And people can also, if they feel like they want to donate stamps to us, we'll definitely take them, because the pen pal program, many times they'll write to us, and then we we put in another stamped envelope, and we obviously put stamp out the spare folders together. But we can't do that. The one jail doesn't allow it is Bergen County Jail. They don't allow stamps because they feel like it's potentially drug contraband within the stamp, behind the stamp. So.
Mm-hmm. Wow. So if somebody wanted to get a hold of you and wanted to help, how would they do it?
hmm Yeah, I mean, my email is V as in Victor Salama, Salama at firstfriendsmjny.org. It's on the website. Certainly email me. We're always looking for, I mean, frankly, like a small organization always does, we're always looking for financial contributions, but we're looking for pen pals, we're looking for stamp out the spare folders, and for people who are in the New York, New Jersey area, we're always looking for volunteers, both for visitation and for post-release. We always need people who are willing to pick up detained friends or transport them to the buses or house them for a night. Those are always really, really useful to us. And of course, you know, financial support is always useful. We have you can do it through our our website. And like I mentioned, our GoFundMe is really something that we're looking. We really need help with bus fares right now. Easy. Just go on our website and you'll find my email there and my telephone number.
Well, that's very easy. Um, let's see. What else did I want to ask you about this? Um, are there Now, I know in some of the detention centers, they have programs for inmates. Now,
Yes.
are the immigrants allowed to participate in those programs?
So, everything in facilities is very separate. The general population stays in one side of the building, and the ICE detainees stay in another. What we try to do is provide some services, but many, if not all, of the jails now are providing something. So, I know that in the New Jersey facilities, they are providing ESL classes. They try to provide if people want to do their GED. Um, we have offered something as different as yoga or meditation, which is very useful. So it all depends. I have to say, it all depends on the facility leadership. There are a lot of facilities that understand that they have to maintain the population active, engaged, and healthy because, frankly, that causes less problems, it causes less stress, and it's less expensive. So they offer services. I know of a detention center here in northern New Jersey that offers hairstyling lessons. They offer a couple of things, like that. So and detainees can also work. They hardly get paid anything. I think they get paid like $3 a day or something, but they can work in the kitchen and they can work in the laundry or something like that. But most facilities will have services, which is great. We're just trying to add more. more and more and more for their health and benefit.
Well, I've seen pictures of some of the detention centers and probably at the border where they just cram all these men into.
Oh, those are insane. I mean, and we talked to people. We had a young man who was telling me, and listen to this. He slept for a night, hugging three of the guys. They were standing on the toilet. That was the only space available. So standing on the toilet, hugging each other so that way they wouldn't fall. The cell was so crowded, and they were eating like bread and like butter. It's terrible. And these facilities are not weren't created, weren't built for this type of volume. And I think that's why we see so many of our detained friends coming here to New Jersey, because there's space here, and these facilities are better run than those down there, frankly. But of course, it's just insane because these people have no idea where New Jersey is for the most part. They don't know why they're here, so and they don't have any family members. Let me make let me make an important point here. One of the critical aspects of the success or failure of our immigration detention system is legal assistance for these immigrants. And New York State has done an amazing job in providing funding to offer every detained immigrant who is from New York pro bono attorneys. That's really, really critical. New Jersey hasn't gotten there yet. Governor Murphy has allocated about $3.1 million to pro bono legal organizations, but that doesn't cover all of the detained immigrants. For the most part, if you can imagine, someone who comes from another country has no idea what our legal system is all about, and the immigration system is very complicated. And the chances of success in your case shoot up by 40% if you have an attorney. So this is really a critical issue and something that we're asking people to support and advocate on behalf of detainees by asking local governments to provide pro bono, funding for pro bono attorneys for detained immigrants. It really makes a massive difference. What you don't want is to represent yourself when you're someone from another country who usually doesn't speak the language. It's insane. So I just wanted to bring that up as an important aspect of this whole crazy system that we have.
Tell us again how many immigrants are in prison or
We
detained.
have right now about 55,000 are in these in jails all across the country, and you can imagine if you're detained in a ICE facility that's rural, that's far away from a center, a population center. Imagine how difficult it is to get an attorney to represent you, especially one that's pro bono. So that's a really massive challenge. I mean, New Jersey being the most densely populated state, I think in the country, it's easier, and these facilities are pretty near each other. But for someone who's in a rural facility, that's a challenge, and also getting visitors and getting family to visit. That's very, very challenging. So there are 55,000 right now, and let's see what happens with the Remain in Mexico policy, whether that number will decrease. More than likely, it probably will in the short term.
Wow. Do you just find though that I know people that get detained in Hawaii, they send them, even going to prison here, they always send them to prison on the mainland, which that's
Hmm.
got to be awful hard for the families.
Sure. Oh, it's brutal. I mean, the family look. Think about it this way: if you have been arrested and you're part of our community, and you were arrested because you were undocumented, do you really think that your family is going to, visit you in detention if they're undocumented? For the most part, no. So that's a major challenge, right? So people are completely separate. Not only are they arrested, now they're separated from their wives or their husbands and their children. So it's a terrible situation. They may be 20 miles away, but they don't see each other because they're worried that they're going to be swept up because they don't have the necessary, paperwork or status. And This is a challenge for people who work, for people who don't have a car. It's not that easy to get to these detention centers, and you're mentioning something, that you'd have to hop islands. I mean, that's an expense for a family. A family doesn't have the means to do so. So the system is really, really broken, and there are cheaper ways, like ankle bracelets or bonds that we can use, and it'll save federal tax dollars, which is our money, and it'll keep families reunited while their cases are go through the process. Like I mentioned, it could take up to 3 years for a decision to be made. So, we're going to be paying $120, $130 a night for someone to remain in jail. They can easily sleep somewhere and be much more productive than this.
Real quickly, do you have any idea? Now, I've been told that some of the Hispanics that are sent back to Mexico that are like the dreamers that get caught up, they're not even considered when they go back to Mexico that they're Mexican. They look at them now as traitors, and a lot of them get killed.
Well, I can tell you that having spoken to a family of someone in that situation, I mean, it's think about the culture shock. Someone who's basically been living in this country for 20 years, and all of a sudden gets sent to a country that he or she may not have never visited, right? Has no idea what it's about, may not even know the language, certainly doesn't know the culture, and now doesn't have a job or anything like that. It's a massive shock, and frankly, what for? Why are we doing this? I mean, if a person has committed a violent crime, I totally understand it. But if you're talking about someone again who's productive, who's part of the community, who has learned here, is ready to produce here in this country, it's completely crazy. And imagine what kind of a shock that is to that person and to the family. So while I can't speak to anything about violence, I can tell you that just from hearing about it and speaking to a family, it puts a family completely in shock, and especially that person. They have no idea where they are and how they're gonna move forward. It's completely insane.
Why aren't the churches stepping up more and giving sanctuary?
I think the sanctuary issue. I have to say, we have a lot of churches who work with us. We have a lot of churches who also go down to the border a lot. The sanctuary situation is tricky because really sanctuary, um, it's a very indefinite situation. You have someone who's in sanctuary. It's very hard to transition that person out to, become part of a community. They stay inside in that sanctuary, and you know, what do you do as the next step? So that's why I think in some ways the sanctuary movement may not have grown as much as people have hoped. I mean, we speak to a synagogue here that has provided sanctuary, open sanctuary. It's known that they have a family that they're providing sanctuary to, but they are facing a challenge. Like, what do we do next for this family? Can we support them indefinitely? Most communities have a hard time doing that. So that's a challenge. It's a major challenge. I think the heart is in the right place with sanctuary. I just feel like, what is the end goal of that? For a short-term sort of solution, I totally get it. I'm not sure if it's a long-term solution that a community can sort of continue to do that.
Makes sense. All right, Victor, if people want to contact you, how do they do it again?
Email, they can go on our website, firstfriendsnjny.org, and they'll see our contact information. But my email is V as in Victor, and then my last name, Salama, Salama, at firstfriendsnjny.org. They can certainly shoot me an email, and I'll just say about our GoFundMe again. It's for bus transportation, bus fare for post-release immigrants. We could really use the help there. And of course, pen pals, volunteers, if you're here in New Jersey and New York, we'd love to have you.
We've got 2 minutes left. What would you like to say to everybody?
Well, I'd like to say to people that I think there's a way to think about this issue. Um, you know, First, educate yourself. Learn about this issue. Don't let it be something that, is what I call a NIMBY issue, not in my backyard, so I won't worry about it. Educate yourself, educate your children, and when you learn about it, educate others. Let them know that there's immigration detention in most of our backyards. Number one. Number two, advocate. Go in front of, listen, in New Jersey we have free county freeholders, but whatever the political structure in your county is, in your town, understand what is happening, how does your town or county or your state think about immigration detention, and fight it. Don't agree to have local funds be used for something like that. And you can write your congressperson and all that. And then at the end, activate. Find an organization such as ours in your local community that supports immigrants in detention, whether it's visitation, whether it's post-release, that they can, you can offer accompaniment services where you can take, immigrants in our community and take them to appointments. Whatever it may be, activate, become active. There's lots of to do. It's a lot to do. It's it's an amazingly great feeling to support someone and to help someone, to get them on their feet and get them to become, productive and integrated parts of our society. So it's educate, advocate, and activate. And I think people will feel really good, and we can solve this issue.
I just want to tell people that you decide to become a pen pal, they will put you with somebody that speaks your language.
Yes, correct. We have a lot of, and I have to say, if you are a Spanish speaker, um, we'd love, there are a lot of people from Central and South America, so we'd love to have people who speak Spanish, who write Spanish. That would be fantastic, both as visitors and pen pals. But like you said, we have people from all over the world in detention centers, unfortunately, and we'll connect you with someone who fits your profile.
Oh, well, thank you very much, Victor Salama, for coming.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. Have a good evening.
All right, aloha. Good night, everybody, and catch you in a
Good night.
couple weeks. I'm taking next week off, and good night. Aloha.